at this point, once you've built your claim simulations, you now have the potential to model your lag, and then following that, your frequency and severity. So report lag or emergence lag there, followed by modeling your frequency and severity, and then you can simulate there to get your full view of emergence. And so I'm going to show you one where that's already been done. So we've got, in addition to the models that have already been run, we now have emergence lag, claim frequency, claim severity. I'm going to open up this emergence lag model. All right, and so we've got a number of fields that were found to be predictive of the lag, of the report lag. So here's experience field, or exposure field 11, I should say, and we've got a factor of 1.235 if this particular field has a value of B, meaning that the lag is 20% longer on average for those. And this is the sort of information that, if you think about pricing, for example, I think a lot of times the assumption in pricing is that all claims are going to develop the same, they're all going to be reported the same, and it can really cause some big distortions. Here you've got an exposure characteristic that says it does report differently. Depending on the age of your pricing data, that can make a big difference. And we've got other fields here as well that are all being found to be predictive. Here's the written premium actually is found to have a relationship, the size of the account. This is a little interesting, maybe a case where you want to see if making this linear, how that does on out-of-sample data, all those sorts of things that you might want to do with predictive modeling. But we're seeing some relationship here between the size of the account, the amount of written premium, and the reporting lag. Okay, so once those models are built, then you click the Simulate Emergence button to simulate emergence going forward. And then you have additional information that you can take a look at. Let's look at the experience by effective date. That's the simulations on the emergence side start with written premium. They start with policies, and we're not, you notice that table that we brought in didn't have any sort of earning or anything like that. It had the premium for that policy and the effective date. And so from that, you're saying, okay, what's the potential for emergence, whether or not that claim has actually already occurred, which I think is really interesting. I'm going to actually drill in here a little bit to show you some detail. This graph is actually showing by policy commencement month how much premium was written. That's what the gray bars are. The blue bars is what's the total of paid losses so far on those policies. So we're looking at by commencement month. The red bars are future payments. I wanted to show you that we have this down to the month level, actually down to the policy level. But now I'm going to drill back in and show you quarterly as well as annual. So we've got, again, the gray bars are written premium. The blue bars are the payments to date. Red bars are payments on current claims, current reported claims. And you can see these gray or these black rectangles. That's the current case reserve amount. So in this case, in 2008, we're showing some savings. 2011, we're showing significant development. Also 2012. The green is anticipated future emergence. And we can look at this in dollars, or we can look at it in ratios. But we also can look at it filtering on different things. So for example, if I look at experience field 3 and I look at field A, we can see a specific outcome for that. We can really think about this as something now that can be aggregated any way you want, because actually all the simulated emergence and development is either associated with a policy in the case of emergence, or associated with a claim in the case of development. So for management reporting purposes, very, very valuable information. I'm also going to look at A and see what that looked like. Okay, very different. And then no filter, just in total. Okay. Let's also take a look at layer distribution. So I'm going to look at the entire layer. This is going to look at emergence and say from 0 to infinity, what are we saying for the distribution of that future emergence? We've got a mean here that's a little more than 50 million. We've got a distribution there. But we also can look at that for a specific layer. And so let's look at that for the layer from, let's say, 4 million to 5 million. because we've got data that's been simulated at the, such a detailed level, we can look at that sort of information. So we've got an interesting result here where, again, we're talking about for each claim, the layer from 4 million to 5 million. And so we've got a lot of them potentially where it's just blowing through both layers, and we have $1 million of loss coming through. Here you're seeing that where you've got plateaus at 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. You've got an average certainly for this, and you've got some probability that also that there's no loss at all in that layer. But the idea then of being able to look at this information by accident period, by layer, and by any sort of cut of the business you might be interested in, I think you'll start to get the idea of how powerful this really is. Before we leave the graph, there's one I forgot to mention on the claim development side. That's looking at mean development. This is just showing, okay, we're starting with this much case reserve. Here's how it develops over time. Remember, time steps are important here. We simulate forward one time step and simulate 1,000 paths for each open claim. But then we take that at the end of that next time step and simulate it forward another time step, and we keep going until everything's closed. And so here you're seeing a graph of that over time, but we can similarly look at that. Let's go back to that claim field 7 and look at that U, which was high developing, and what that looks like versus that null category. So very different shape. Now, if you've got a different mix of claims now on where you're more heavily skewed towards the nulls or to the U's than what you have been in the past, you're going to see very different development than what you've seen in the past. On the reserving side, this really all comes down to mix shifts, identifying these things quickly, identifying them before they would necessarily show up in development patterns, at least in any sort of consistent way that you could actually change your view. Now I want to show you some of the different exports that you can get out of here, because those are important pieces to have as well. So you'll notice under export, you've got a number of different options. I'm just going to go through them and open them up one by one. So this is reserved by claim, and we'll open that up. And you'll notice we've got claim ID, the accident period for that claim. We chose an annual time step here, so this is just year. If we had chosen quarterly or monthly, it would have been a more detailed accident period. We've got the current case reserve amount. We've got the estimated future payments for that claim, and then therefore subtracting out to get the anticipated development. Obviously, you can think about this feeding into all sorts of downstream management reports to say, and even if you're, I think that it's worth noting that this is brand new, way of thinking about reserves within our industry. Nobody's going to do away with triangles, and they shouldn't do away with triangles anytime soon. This is likely something that people use on the side of that to understand what's going on. But even if this isn't your official opinion of where things are, or doesn't match out to your book, as a starting point for allocation, to be able to allocate your emergence down to the policy level, and your claim development down to the claim level. Tremendous power for making your management reporting much more responsive to things that are actually changing. So here's mean emergence by policy. And so same sort of thing. We've got the policy ID, the effective year, and the anticipated emergence. And so you can obviously include that in management reporting as well. Okay, expected loss ratio. So what this is looking at is, because we've analyzed the losses not only in what we would normally consider IBNR, but also in unearned premium reserves, we compare that loss to the unearned premium reserve and come up with an expected loss ratio. So by starting with reserving, we're ending up with a pricing model as well, but one that takes into account differences in development across different classes of business, across geographies, across different types of claims that are being seen. And so that sort of information obviously is very, very valuable to look at as well. You could do a quick pivot table to look at some of this information, to say, okay, I want to look at a particular exposure field. I'm just kind of picking one at random here. Look at the unearned premium reserve, and the loss embedded in that unearned premium reserve. And look at a ratio between the two. Looks like most of what we have is in two categories here, but just picking one at random here, it's a pretty big difference. This one is showing a expected loss ratio of around 100%. This one's showing 60%. So if you're growing a lot into this particular class of business, and you're not aware of these potential differences in development, you might be a little slow to recognize that, hey, the business that we wrote last month, not necessarily even earned last month, but that we wrote last month, we're writing a lot more of this information. So that's where I think a lot of this, the power from the software really lies. Okay, and let's take a look at this next one is important for being able to reconcile to a more traditional kind of triangle analysis, and we'll open that up. All right, so this is putting in one place by accident period. We picked a annual time step here, but we've got our case reserve, anticipated development on that, estimated emergence, and total reserve estimate. And here you've got, for example, a big case savings being shown for this particular accident year, and that's driven by where those particular claims are sitting relative to their limits, based on all the various characteristics of those claims and what we've seen before on similar claims. And then, because this is obviously new and hardly what I would consider generally accepted actuarial practice at this point, being able to bring it back to a triangle world is important. And so we have got an option here for developing triangle data or putting triangle data together as well. We're already organizing all of that transaction data together, and we'll open that up. Okay, so here we've got for each accident period and development age, the case reserve balance that's sitting out there, and the incremental payments. We've got a reserve group that was actually defined by the software based on a tiered structure looking at high development to low development. So we've got 3 tiers being developed there, and then we've also got projected case development as well as history. So I could look at this and do a quick pivot table and just say I want payments down here, and development age across the top, accident period down there, and add some filters where we've got data type history. So here's our total history, and we can look at that separate for these different tiered reserve groups to see how they might develop differently in a normal triangle analysis. And I see that as really being the reconciliation process, to be able to say, all right, we've identified these differences in claim development and emergence across different classes of business. If we look at triangles that are organized that way, we should see this. We should see that we're growing into class 7 equals U, or whatever it was, or this particular zip code, or this particular state, or class of business, SIC code, all the different things you could look at.